This episode of Core Elements is sponsored by Psycho Chickens, who says, I replay old school games as well as some new ones. Go to youtube.com/psychochickens with a Z and check it out. If you would like to sponsor an episode of Core Elements, please go to deadworkers.com/sponsor. From the Dead Workers Party, a podcast about gaming featuring the people that bring your games to life. These are your core elements. Core Elements, episode 50, recorded on October 1st, 2013. I am Wes Wilson, and Spencer is not with us this evening. He had some family stuff going on, but we do have a special guest. We have Dan Teasdale of No Goblin.
Hey, how's it going?
Going pretty well. I'm kind of excited now that PAX is well behind us. I can actually book guests again, which is kind of exciting.
I know we're not crushed under the workload of trying to get stuff ready. It's pretty great.
It's and that's just it. I always feel bad because the same thing happened last year. I had about a month and a couple of weeks where I wasn't able to get an episode out, and it was kind of sad because I keep hitting these milestones right when I feel that the show is doing really great.
Yeah.
And here we are at episode 50. And Dan, you've had a pretty extensive career in the industry, haven't you?
Yeah, I've been around all over the place. I started off in Australia. I worked at a place called Oren Games, which did Dark Reign, for anyone who's old enough to remember that. Then went from there to work at Pandemic Studios Australia, where we worked on such classics as Army Men RTS and also Destroy All Humans, which was a fun sandbox game for the Xbox and PS2.
I own it.
And after that, fantastic. Then after that, moved to the US and worked at Harmonix, where I worked on all 3 Rock Band games. Which is good fun game to have on your resume.
Yeah, I mean, there are very few people who say, "Oh, Rock Band, I don't like that game."
No, it's been pretty great. It was actually great for when I was moving over here, because I have to get a visa every couple of years while I'm here, and so I would fly down to the Bahamas actually to get my visa renewed every year. And they were saying, "What do you do?" It's I work at MTV Networks. It's "Oh, what do you do there?" It's I make Rock Band. It's "Oh, that's great. My favorite song is such and such." And so I kind of had this free pass going through U.S. immigration for a while. But then after that, after Rock Band 3 shipped, I moved over to Austin and worked at Twisted Pixel for a while on stuff like the Gunstringer, which was a Kinect undead cowboy marionette game, which was really fun to make. And then most recently, I've actually co-founded a studio up here in Seattle, Washington called No Goblin.
And you guys have not made an announcement yet about your game, but you have said specifically that it will not rely on any gaming tropes.
That is true. It's something that's pretty unique and something that is kind of towards the kind of games that I like to make, which aren't very formulaic games. I mean, you can kind of see it in my sort of resume, I guess. I'm kind of hitting these different genres every time I make something. And so a lot of the games that we want to make at No Goblin aren't necessarily, FPS number 17 or, new fantasy RTS game. They're more, unique mechanics, unique settings, and really providing sort of new things for people to play and experience.
And you are in business with someone named Panzer, who is this mythical artist that I know nothing about, and it has been everyone's speculation about what's going on there. What can you tell me about your partner?
Panzer's awesome. Panzer, I actually worked with at Harmonix for a while, and she's been doing stuff since then and doing some consulting work. She's also the reason why she's referred to as Panzer is more because that's kind of the name she's famous for now. She's a semi-famous Let's Player now. She did a Off LP, which is archived on the Let's Play archive, which is pretty awesome and definitely worth a read. She streams as part of the Scottish Drop, but besides all of that stuff, the day job is just being a really great artist and designer, and so it's been pretty great working with her again at No Goblin.
And have you made any announcements at all about your game?
No announcement. Oh, we announced that we are coming to PS4 and PC. Everything else has been quiet, but we are going to be announcing something very, very soon.
Okay, excellent. I'm glad to hear it. Well, we will move on and talk about the games that we've been playing, but we'll get more of what you're doing in a little bit.
Awesome.
Lab Notes.
So my gameplay, and I was actually discussing this a little bit with Dan before the show. My gameplay has mainly been focusing on some older games. I finally got the Dragonborn DLC, and I've been playing through that. And returning to Skyrim was absolutely delicious and wonderful. I jokingly call it love in the time of Pompeii, because there's that volcano spewing ash in the air the whole time. But it was really kind of cool because I only did about 7 levels in Morrowind, but I've heard so much good stuff about that game that it was nice kind of feeling like I was touching it, even though I wasn't really. It's sort of this tangential kind of, hey, you get to hang out with Morrowind without playing it. And I really liked it. And I thought the setting was great and a lot of the stuff was great, but I had leveled too high by the time I got there, and I pretty much just kicked anything's ass that got in my way. That's what I get for playing most of the game. I thought about resetting a lot of my skills, like going back and being level 0 and stuff when I went through and did it, but I didn't. Have you poked around with any of the DLC for Skyrim at all?
I haven't, actually. I went on a huge Skyrim kick when it came out, and I'm a recovering Skyrim addict. The one thing I really want to check out is Half-Fire, the one where you get to build your own house and basically do very un-Skyrim things by basically building a house and a residence and things like that.
See, and that's funny because that's the one thing I didn't want to do. I really didn't care much about the customization aspect of things. The one thing I wanted more of that big, epic, go and do Dragonborn kind of things. And so I ate that up. I ate it up.
No, I think it's probably the kind of thing where February, March next year, once I've depleted all of the launch titles and all of my backlog and all my other stuff, I'll start going through into Skyrim DLC and all the other stuff I have in my backlog that I want to play.
Yeah. I also poked around with The Witcher 2 some more. I'm trying to finish it. I got gifted Blood Dragon for my birthday, but I kind of don't want to dig into another game until I finish one that's on my computer. And the one I have selected right now is The Witcher 2, which I feel like is kind of important for me to go ahead and get out of the way because I really like the game. But it's one of these things where I feel like I've been dibble-dabbling with it too long and I need to dig in and just go ahead and eat it up and be content. And I am really enjoying it. I've been streaming it at night. If you guys watch the stream at all, you can, if you subscribe to this stream, you can kind of watch. I do play The Witcher 2 1 or 2 nights a week, and I put in a good 4 or 5 hours each night. So I'm still enjoying it. It is a huge game, though. Oh, my God, it feels so big. And, I put 80-something hours into Skyrim, and that felt big. But I think it felt big before it started. Whereas
I had a problem with it where not really a problem. I had it on my wish list on Steam for a while and eventually picked it up. And just that first hour is just this cliff face of trying to sort of learn everything that's going on and sort of adapt to that sort of Eastern European style of development. And it's always a little tough.
yeah. And I love it. I love action RPG stuff. But at the same time, the other thing is if anybody just tunes into the stream randomly and then I get into a conversation with someone and there's 14 levels of politics going on and people being mentioned that even though I've played both games, I have no idea who they are, because the way the narrative in the game works, they refer to things as if you know about them, even if you don't. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of funny, but at the same time, I feel really sorry for some of the people watching the stream. But I'm loving it. And then lastly, I finally got around to picking up Gone Home. I got it gifted to me, and I went through it, and that was a really, really delightful playthrough. It's a narrative experience, kind of like Dear Esther, and it was, by the end, I could not wipe the smile off my face. It was just such a pleasant experience, and I loved it so much.
It just has a really, really great sense of place about it as well, like that 90s kind of, even as someone who grew up on the other side of the world in the 90s, it still evokes that kind of childhood I had, I guess, in terms of the setting and the environment and all of the little details through it. Yeah,
and there's actually people I want to share it with that I think might be able to tap into that cultural sense a little. I'm 45, so it was a little after my time, but I kind of want to see what some people from that generation think of it. So I'm really I do want to share that game, and I recommend it to almost anyone. It's not it's not a huge game. if you read everything extensively, you can make it through in about 4 hours. It took me about an hour and a half because I was a filthy skimmer. So, well, what have you been playing lately, Dan?
I've been playing a lot of Grand Theft Auto 5. Just a huge time has passed, and I have not known what has happened amount of GTA 5. It's good. I don't think I need to say it, but yeah, it's a fantastic Grand Theft Auto game.
What I've been pondering getting it, but I really want it on the PC. Mm-hmm. And I figure it's going to come out there eventually.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much. I mean, they haven't announced anything, obviously, but I mean, it's pretty much a foregone conclusion that you'll see a PC version, and I guess there'll be an Xbox One and a PS4, re-release of it and all of that.
Yeah.
I debated it because I'm holding off on like Assassin's Creed and Battlefield for next gen, but. For GTA, I don't have the amount of self-discipline to wait a couple of months to play a GTA game. I need to digest that instantly.
Is it really I mean, everybody that I've talked to about it is really just like, you can do kind of whatever you want. Is it really that much of a step up in open world design? It's
the thing that I like about the GTA games the most is that they have a sense of world building that I don't think people know how to build open worlds, and Volition does it well, and all of these other groups do it well. But there's something about the way Rockstar builds worlds and reinforces everything in them that is kind of like a special sauce for what they do.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the reason that GTA succeeds, where a lot of those other titles don't, is that they back up everything all the way. They're not afraid to record a crazy one-off line for a situation that may only happen once to 1% of people. If something's going to happen, they'll invest the time and effort to make that pay off. And it's just the amount of crazy, there's tiny details all through that. They have a tidal system in the game. So if you're sitting at the beach, you'll see the tide go down and go back up again. Or if you're in this one I just found out yesterday, which is ridiculous. If you're in a car that's a really crappy car, you get sweatier because there's no AC on. So when you get out, you have a sweat patch down the back of your shirt. It's just ridiculous levels of tying all of these systems together. Which is it's not, obviously, having sweat stuff is cool, and having all of these stuff is cool, but just the way that they're not afraid to just spend lots of time just getting them all talking to each other is just wonderful.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely going to pick it up eventually. The other thing is, I figured with so much on my plate and so much backlog on my poor, sad Steam account. And I was also telling Dan I just had a baby, so that's you can't exactly whip out The Witcher 2 when your kids are running around the house.
Yeah, I think they need attention sometimes.
Yeah, silly kids. So what else have you been poking around with?
I finally got into Rogue Legacy. I've been holding off on that for a while and stupidly picked it up about a day or two before GTA came out and got thoroughly stuck into that. I'm absolutely terrible at Spelunky and games like that, so I'm no surprise I'm absolutely terrible here and haven't taken down a boss yet or anything like that. But I'm just having tons of fun just going through and sort of upgrading my guy very slowly.
Yeah, I've wanted to poke around with that game, but I also I don't get Spelunky at all. I was so excited. There are people like Edmund McMillan, who we had on the show, who was I played more of this game than anything else, and all these other people saying Spelunky, Spelunky, Spelunky. And then I tried it and I'm like, I don't get it. I don't feel the appeal. And I have a feeling I would feel a little bit that way with Rogue Legacy as well. We did have one of the developers on one of our later episodes, and there are a lot of people loving Rogue Legacy. I just don't think it was going to be the game for me.
It's fair enough. No, I think that with Spelunky as well, there's definitely there's a certain mindset that makes that game extra fun once you hit a pro level. And actually, in the house here, we had a bunch of the Scottish drop guys down for PAX, and Ragni, who's a crazy Spelunky player. We just watched him play Spelunky for a couple of hours, and it's just the most ridiculous high level, making me never want to play Spelunky again because I know I'll never reach his crazy Spelunky heights.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of those games that same with Binding of Isaac or things like that, where I know lots of people who are absolutely fantastic at those games, but knowing that I will never reach the proper way to experience them is kind of kind of a turn off for me in a little bit.
Yeah, I kind of imagine that that Spelunky is that game that one really popular Twitch player who all he does is smoke dope and play incredibly difficult games.
Yeah.
Where he would play the same level over and over for like 6 hours straight trying to beat it. That's kind of where I see Spelunky.
Yeah.
Is appealing to that. So anything else? So have you been playing anything else?
Yeah, that's a pretty good. Besides that, I recently got a Wii. Besides that, we recently got a Wii U in the house. So I'm catching up on a year's worth of games that I haven't played on the Wii U, like Super Mario Brothers and obviously Wind Waker, which I'm basically replaying a 10-year-old game at this point. But yeah, I'm actually liking my Wii U experience, which I wasn't really expecting. Like, it seems like a lot of the issues behind why the console isn't working out seem to be more positioning on Nintendo's part and not really having a good stable of like unique titles to push it through. But the actual like the experience of playing something on the gamepad and the experience of like how those things work together is actually really neat. I kind of wasn't expecting that.
Oh, very cool. Eureka! Ow! So the big announcements over the last week, and I feel like these are pretty big as far as the gaming world goes. Steam had 3 big, huge announcements. They announced Steam OS, they announced the Steam boxes, and they announced the Steam controller. And I feel like all 3 were pretty big punches. But the hilarious thing is I've seen 2 main reactions to them. One is all the people making fun of it. And then the other thing is the people saying, who is this for?
Yeah, that's a kind of a good question as well. Like, when you view it from like Valve's perspective, all of those seem like really great plays. Like SteamOS means they don't have Windows 8 dependency in the future, so it's a safeguard for that. The Steam boxes, you have a part of that. The streaming as part of that is actually really huge as well, since it means they don't have to worry about porting 3,000 Steam titles. And obviously they need their own controller as well so that they don't have to get people to buy 360 controllers. But the audience for all of that, like I think it's one of those things you have to view more on this is a good thing for Steam and not necessarily this is a competitor to the Xbox One or the PS4.
Right. Well, and I think what I was impressed by, number one, they went for a Linux-based solution. They're not going to charge for it. With the Steam OS, and then with the Steam boxes, I assume they're going to have their hands on some of it, but they're more creating guidelines and structures, and they're going to have a fair, better, and best kind of situation where you've got a high-end Steam box and a low-end Steam box, and they might come from different producers. Was I correct in all that?
Yeah, that seems right. I mean, basically they're setting a hardware standard, and then hardware manufacturers can make whatever they want.
Yeah.
And the thing that excited me about that is like I tried to build a Steam box last year, and there's just too many hoops for it to get through right now. So having a USB stick that I can just put in and it goes into big picture straight away, that's huge. And the other part of it is that I can do that on a box that's under $500 now. Like I don't have to. I bought this like micro ATX motherboard and case and everything, and I'm trying to figure out how to fit like a full-size GPU in there, which isn't going to happen. But like now that I can, I have this $200 PC that I can basically stream Steam games to, like that's something I'll play Rogue Legacy on my TV with. Like there's enough stuff through there that good things can happen to it, but I think there's like 1 or 2 more steps before it's like that eureka moment of okay, now the Steam platform is viable in the living room.
Do you think it's going to go the same way that Steam itself did? I mean, do you remember all the Steam hate when it first came out with Half-Life 2?
Oh, yeah. I unfortunately was part of that Steam hate, and that's cataloged on the internet. That's never removable. So there's 22, 23-year-old me complaining on the internet, which I wish I could erase, but unfortunately is still there.
But I mean, at that point in time, they were good complaints. I complained as well. It seemed illogical. It seemed irrational. Eventually, they fixed it with the offline play.
Offline play and going to third parties were huge things that pushed them through.
Yeah, and I mean, right now, I get mad when people try to sell me games on other platforms. I want all my games on Steam. I want them centrally located. I want my friends to be able to see what I'm playing, and I really don't care. Like, I'll wait for a game to come out on Steam, even if it's something I want to play. The only reason I bought Mass Effect 3 is because I finally found a good sale on it.
Yeah, I think it's just that one step away from turning that into something that's big. And I don't know whether it's like doing a PS Vita TV style like $99 box, or if it's putting streaming clients on consoles, like some other crazy like pie in the sky thing. But like they're all good things that need to be done for Valve to make inroads, but I don't think it's the killer blow yet.
Do you? And I'm kind of interested. Well, one of my favorite cartoons was, I saw it on Reddit, and it was just an advice animal kind of mockery thing, and it basically was I think it was like a Scumbag Steve one, and it said makes fun of lack of innovation in gaming. Or complains about lack of innovation in gaming, makes fun of the Steam controller. And that was my first reaction as well. I'm like, wait, what did you think they were going to do? Just regurgitate another Xbox or PS3 controller?
I mean, I guess that's the other part of it. It's like, it's going to be interesting to see how that works. It seems like it was designed for like getting Dota onto the TV, essentially.
Yeah.
And I'm skeptical, but I'm willing to give the haptics on a touchpad a shot and see if how it works and if it's usable. But at the same time, like if they're making a play for the living room, like that cuts out half of their library or more by going for that layout. But yeah. I mean, maybe that platform will be appealing enough that people will develop a second set of controls for it, or they'll find other workarounds. But
do you think maybe they'll come up with something as simple as a keyboard for the couch that basically is just a big macro pad that you keep next that you keep next to you, and basically if you need something you just hit a button to get to another. I don't know.
It feels like such a hack to have like a keyboard in the living room. Like that was my Google TV problem as well. It's like, I don't want a keyboard in my living room. I want to sit on a couch and relax with something I can controller in my hands, or just play games. I don't want to have to deal with the maintenance to get to that point.
Well, and I actually saw an interview that somebody was describing that they were a lean back gamer instead of a lean forward gamer. Because I'm a lean forward gamer. I'm a mouse and keyboard kind of guy. But other people want to lay back on their couch, and that's what the controller's for. I'm kind of sad that I'm not more of a console gamer.
You're missing out.
But it's the lack of control. I'm extremely frustrated by shooters on analog sticks. I feel as if I'm just swinging madly around, trying to aim at something. But at the same time, and the way that I view consoles is that if I want a game, I'm going to play on a PC. But if I want to play a game that is kind of a group experience, so that like someone else might be watching, or I might be playing a multiplayer game with friends, the console is the way to go.
That seems like a fair split as well.
And my problem is that with a wife and babies, pretty much I don't play games with people anymore. So, but anyway, I don't know. I'm excited to see where this is going to go. I feel, in my heart of hearts, I like to believe that Valve is smarter than to take these steps without a solid plan for the future.
No, I think this is definitely. I think this is the first step in that plan for the future. They don't want to live in a world where Windows 8.2 comes out and for some reason it doesn't support DirectX 12 on the desktop. At that point they're screwed essentially, and that Microsoft takes the store. So I mean, I think it's a necessary play for them to do, and I think it's something that I think in 10 years' time, if everything goes right, we'll go, oh yeah, that was the moment that they built this building blocks for Steam to take over the world. But yeah, it's the building blocks.
And Iron Waffle in the chat room just presented something interesting. He said, well, I'm a console gamer, and to me, who is trying to become more of a PC gamer, this is the perfect step for me.
Yeah, I think it's like, if you're willing to invest the time and get it to work, I think it's fantastic. I'm squarely in that group where I'll spend a couple of hours trying to get Steam game streaming from my PC to my TV. But it's just what's the next step is kind of the thing that I'm kind of curious about.
Well, and you mentioned earlier the PS Vita TV, and I thought there was some interesting developments there also. They came up with something called the PS Vita TV, and what it will do is, first off, it will let you play PlayStation Vita games on a television, and then eventually it will allow you to play PS4 games in another room from your PS4.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, actually. Like the idea that I could have a PS4 in my living room and then just get a Vita TV and hook it up in my bedroom to do Netflix or like other stuff like that. That sounds like it's a pretty awesome thing. Like it's not, I don't think it's the kind of thing that's going to, change the world or anything, but like just if you want to be in that ecosystem, like having something that's possible for you to like do that is pretty cool.
Yeah, and also like I'm gonna have multiple kids wanting to play a video game, and the way I heard it discussed is eventually you could conceivably have something like Battlefield 13 playing on your PS4, and then instead of doing it split screen, you have one person on the PS Vita TV playing it, and in another room. So you essentially get two screens for your game. I thought that was kind of compelling as well.
It's pretty amazing. It's kind of like the Wii U promise of split screen gaming, but actually done with a proper platform. Like I would love to see the split TV multiplayer thing like you're talking about. That'd be rad.
Yeah. I have another interesting kind of story here. Candy Crush Studios King. For those who are unfamiliar with Candy Crush, it is the successor to all the evil Facebook mind-melting games. And I still play it. It's my mindless, hey, I'm holding the baby, I need something that won't, require more than one mouse hand kind of thing. But they are going to offer an IPO, which if anyone is familiar with what happened to Zynga after it offered its IPO, it collapsed for the most part. Most of their building lately has been in the form of acquisitions of existing companies lately. But Candy Crush is going to try to step out into the world with the big boys. And I think by the way, all the things we're talking about will be in the show notes if you want to go read the articles. One of the things it talked about was they're going to try to, instead of diversifying into 20 or 30 games like Zynga did and try to just flood the market, they're going to focus on a few really good games. I think that's probably a pretty good idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Like Zynga was just evil from the start, and like there was no question that Zynga was a failed, terrible mistake that we shall never talk about again.
Which is funny because I have like some really good friends who work there. A guy I grew up with named Paul Stefanak went up and worked on there. Brian,
I know Paul. Yeah.
Yeah, and Brian Reynolds is also from Huntsville.
Yeah, I mean, like there's a lot of like Brian and all those guys. Like I love Brian Reynolds. Like such an amazing guy. Like seeing these great people go to Zynga, it hurts. It hurts me. Like I'm sure there's a bunch of people there doing great things.
Yeah.
And like when I say Zynga is evil, I'm not saying every single person that works at Zynga is evil. I'm just saying the company itself is a morass. Like it's just a
foulness.
It's terrible. It has hindered. It has hindered our industry.
It is.
I mean that seriously as well. Like that and 38 Studios as well. Like as someone who's starting up a studio, we basically had to take venture capital and all that stuff just off the table because all of that has been destroyed by Zynga and 38.
Right.
I mean that's fine for us because we're small, but if we were wanted to be a 30-person studio out the gate, like that's destroyed now because of Zynga and 38.
Yeah. Yeah. And lastly, I got another interesting little article here, and it's funny. I actually tried to get Brian and Paul to come on the show once, and I never was able to do it. I do hope to get them on at some point in time. I wonder if it was they didn't come on the show because they were at Zynga. Anyway, I've got another great little article here. It's called 10 Indie PC Games to Keep an Eye On. And some of these are actually kind of already in the eye. First off, there is Starbound, which anyone who is familiar with our Minecraft podcast and a lot of the people associated with that, Bebop Vox has been ranting about Starbound for ages and ages. That's going on. There's a great little sci-fi film noir game called The Maker's Eden. There's an indie RTS named Meridian coming out that looks really excellent. Lichdom, we had on one of the guys from Lichdom on the show earlier this year. Really excited about that. So anyway, I'm going to provide a link to that. There's videos to all of these. They all look interesting, and indie gaming just seems like such a fantastic environment right now, and there's a lot of great creativity, and it's exciting to me.
It's pretty great. It's a little intimidating as someone kind of entering that space, but I'm like going through the PAX like mega booth and just seeing like all of this crazy, insane talent. It's kind of a little nerve wracking trying to figure out how we're going to like launch our stuff and get people to notice it. But at the same time, just seeing like just the level of quality that's coming out these days is just fantastic.
Well, but at the same time, like I notice a lot of little the Card Hunter launch. We had on Joe McDonough a while back, and the Card Hunter launch seems to be going really well. I mean, I don't know how much money they're bringing in right now, but everyone's speaking really positively about it, and it just makes me so happy that people are able to start up 1 or 2 person studios and produce high quality stuff and reach an audience nowadays. It feels like the world is a better place for it.
It feels really great as well, especially for like guys like Joe and John Che and like those guys behind Card Hunter. Like they're like amazing guys who've been making these really huge titles. Like it's really great seeing what they can do as like a small like 3 or 4 people like team and like making something that's just absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Inspiration.
So Dan, you've got this super secret project that No Goblin has been like not telling anybody about. You're really doing a Super Drake Tracker 2000 EX expansion, aren't you?
That's true. You've rolled me, and it's true. Super Drake Tracker 3000 EX Alpha is coming out. No, it's working on the Drake Tracker stuff has been actually really amazing. Like that and the Men of Game Development calendar, which I will pimp out at menofgamedev.com, has been amazing. Like just the amount of response. Like PAX is a great example. Like I was walking around PAX and like I got pulled over like a dozen times from people like wanting me to sign calendars and like talk about that stuff. And like it's kind of this point where like when I left Harmonix, I was worried that I was going to be like the Rock Band guy for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And now I'm actually legitimately worried that I might just be the Super Drake Tracker guy for the rest of my life. Every time I go through, people like, when's the next calendar coming out? Like,
so tell people what this is for the people who don't know.
So I'm kind of a jerk, essentially. Basically, what happened is I used to work with a guy at Harmonix called John Drake, who's he's like the brand manager, PR. His title changes every year, essentially, but he's basically the main guy for community and PR at Harmonix. And he flies constantly, like just flying like hundreds of thousands of miles every year to show off games and things like that. And whenever he does it, he always tweets that he's boarding flight such and such on Virgin America to whatever, like every single time. And the Giant Bomb guys were making fun of him for it, and I made fun of him for this once. And Ryan Davis from Giant Bomb sent me an email. I was like, I'm about to invite you into the fold. Say nothing of this. And I got this Google Doc spreadsheet that was like Jeff and Ryan and all those guys just cataloging every time he tweeted and all the reasons why and the discussions about it. It's just this amazing set of data. And they were like, okay, we want to show, I think we're going to show the spreadsheet at PAX East. And I was like, no, we got to do something cooler than this. And so I whipped up this Unity app that was kind of just an infographic kind of thing showing all the flights he took on a map and compiling stats and stuff. And I just called it the Drake Tracker 2000 EX just for, just random name to throw up on there. And that went really well. And so after that was released, we were talking about it and like saying, maybe we should just chuck it up on Giant Bomb, or maybe we should release, the source for it or something. And then because we wanted to escalate this even more, we basically came up with this idea that we would launch a Kickstarter for it to make Super Drake Tracker 2000 EX, and it would have a button that would allow you to buy John Drake a Diet Coke at like any time in the world, whenever you wanted to. And then at PAX Prime, we would deliver all of these Diet Cokes to him during the middle of the Harmonix panel and interrupt it. So we set up this Kickstarter, it's $550 goal, which we hit in the first 3 minutes. And we ended up raising, I think it was $12,500, just some ridiculous amount of money. And like I had I legitimately thought, maybe we'll get a couple of thousand and that'll be cool and we can get the pro license and put shadows in and things. And I made up these like dumb stretch goals, like if we get 8,000 will, ship on the Oculus Rift, or you get 10,000, I'll make an Ouya port. And of course, we hit all of these things, so I had to go and buy an Ouya and port it to the Ouya. It's like just the dumbest things. And so that's kind of like where that went. And so we ended up raising the Kickstarter, and then we ended up buying like 250 Diet Cokes for him and dropped them on his desk. And it's just enabling me being just a huge jerk to my friends. And the other part of this is like one of the rewards was the Men of Game Development calendar, which when I put it in, I was like, okay, I'll just Photoshop Drake's head on 12 people and that'll be this calendar I'll send out to 10 people. But that escalated, and we ended up doing like 200 people that backed for the calendar, and we enlisted like Brad Muir from Double Fine and Manveer from BioWare and Dave Lang from Iron Galaxies in this like spa, like with all these photos of Drake around him. It's just like the most ridiculous calendar. And so now, actually in a couple of days, I'm going to pick up the second edition prints of the calendar to send out to people who've been buying it. And you can get yours too at menofgamedev.com. But yeah, this is I feel like my life now is I am now making the drink tracker and calendars, and then on the side I make video games.
So you've really done a lot of different kinds of things. Like you did rhythm gaming and platformers and weird shooters. How do you feel like there's any kind of a common theme into in what you're doing? Do you sometimes go, oh look, I did it again with something?
I think a lot of it is mechanic driven. Like I like all of the games I've worked on have been ones that have had like a really great core mechanic that is being expanded by story or like expanded by music in Rock Band's case. So I think a lot of it is kind of systems based design is kind of like the industry term for it. A lot of it's been that, and a lot of it's also been just finding like narratives that aren't just generic narrative. Like the closest I got to that was Army Men RTS, which even then it's like little green plastic men in an RTS rather than normal aliens versus whatever. So I think it's kind of like that's kind of the path even leading up to No Goblin. Like those are the kind of games I like making, and those are the kind of games Panzer and like all the other people we were working with like making, and that kind of served as our base for what we want to do. Is we want to make these we kind of want to make these games that are system based and they aren't content grinds, and we want to make these games that are doing original settings and aren't just another fantasy game or another sci-fi game.
Right. I mean, it's funny though, like I've thought about like the things that I like about certain styles of games, and there are certain genres that just seem to sort of fit it. I know you've kind of railed against the idea of these standard fantasy settings, these goblins, as you call them. But at the same time, like, are there ways that you can tailor that without because the ability for one person to go out in the world and make a difference is one of the key elements in most gaming, or, one team being able to do it. And a lot of times that requires certain limitations. I mean, if everybody has, a black hole cannon that they can shoot at planets, you've got to kind of limit it to whole spaceship combat or fighter combat or these certain tropes, wizards and sword masters. How do you tweak something so that it feels new without like damaging the limitations that some of these genres provide?
I think a lot of it is I mean, it sounds kind of dumb, but a lot of it is just like focusing on something unique you want to bring to the experience. Like I know I've railed on like goblins and space goblins for a while since we announced, but at the same time, like I love Game of Thrones, I love Battlestar Galactica. Like these are great shows, but their focus. Like the focus of Game of Thrones isn't about fantasy. It's about the houses and the rivalries going on and the characters and how they're built. Like there isn't the fact that they're not holding guns or they're not driving cars isn't the focus of the show, which I think is a lot of the problem with some of the games. I'm totally not saying all of the games. I love a lot of fantasy and sci-fi games as well, but a lot of it just seems like it's the D-grade filler you put in to make this game exist.
Right.
And I think there's just more interesting things you can do.
Gotcha.
And so if I'm not saying that fantasy is terrible and anyone who likes fantasy is terrible, like some people thought I did. I'm just saying, like, if you're going to be making something, like if your vision is to make the best fantasy archer game ever, and like you're going to make something really unique with great characters. That's awesome, but at the same time, like maybe there's other things you could be doing that could be cool with those mechanics or with those stories, with the story elements.
Right. Push the boundaries, if nothing better.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you thought you might be stuck as the Rock Band guy, forever. What do you think it will take to revitalize that genre? What do you think is the downfall of it, and what do you think it'll take to like bring that genre back to life?
I think a lot of it. I mean, there's a lot of the downfall, and it's something I think about a lot because it's something I was very close to for a while. So even I didn't see a lot of the stuff happening in terms of like player perception until I was out of that sort of space. I think a lot of it is just saturation. Like between us and Activision, like we released, many dozens of Rock Band and Guitar Hero games and many instruments on shelves. And we basically tapped out anything interesting in rhythm beat match for plastic instruments and bands and things like that.
Yeah.
I think it's going to have to be something on the order of like how Dance Central revitalized dancing games.
Right.
Like it took 10 years after DDR for that to sort of come back into and be something that's interesting to people. I think the extra challenge for rhythm action beat match is that with Dance Central, they didn't have to stock dance mats for that, and with whatever the next evolution of beat match is, like it's going to have to be something that doesn't require retailers to bring in stacks of plastic instruments, just because retailers themselves aren't going to want to stock that anymore.
Right.
But I mean, there's interesting stuff happening. It's like the Rocksmith is going great with their new release. There's lots of small indie stuff that's looking good, like the new Audio Surf. There's a game called Thumper, which is actually done by a bunch of ex-Harmonix people that's coming out soon that looks really interesting. Like there's definitely interesting things going on, but like to get to like the highs of 2007, 2008, like those were just crazy times. Like I think for anything to get up to that point ever again it's a tough ask essentially for anything.
Well, I mean, and around that time, I do conventions as well, and we would do Rock Band tournaments where like what we would do is we would do a third of it would be your actual in-game score, and then a third of it would be your costumes, and a third of it would be your performance. And there was there was an enthusiasm behind the whole idea of Rock Band at that point in time where people who were playing the game were so excited about it that they put a lot of energy into these contests. Yeah. And we'd end up with some really amazing stuff. And it's waned out to the point where we're like scaling that back as our promo tool nowadays. I don't know if you've gotten to play Artemis, but that's the tool
Artemis is fantastic. We had a Twisted Pixel group that played Artemis once, and it was a failure. Like we were a terrible spaceship crew. But it's that same feeling you got like in Rock Band when you first got the van of a group of 4 people in the world tour. Like Artemis triggers those same feelings in me, like getting the 6 people together and just this absolute failure of a thing, but like you have like this teamwork that you got to this point, like that Space Team and like games like that, like they're just like these really great experiences that people really haven't had before.
Aaron Fox in the chat room, he had some Rock Band questions. He said, what was the most surprisingly hard part of the development process, and what is the biggest regret you have about Rock Band and the direction it went? And when did you realize you had made it?
So the hardest part, like there were a lot of hard parts to that. Like we had to, basically learn how to make plastic in a year. And we managed to do that. Like there are a lot of hard parts outside of our control, outside of like the software team's control in terms of, things like, we had to make, like 8 million sets of drumsticks. And like we were the biggest manufacturer of drumsticks for a year or two. Just like ridiculous, like magnitude things that like people hadn't done before. On our end, it was all like the hardest part, besides getting it all together and shipping, was matchmaking. Like the concept of having different controllers hooked up to the 360 wasn't really a thing, and it was all designed for one controller. So stuff like online and getting people into a session and out of a session was just something that the console wasn't built for. So we like matchmaking in Halo is tough enough, and like you already have crazy awesome systems that the Bungie guys worked on to get people into groups and get them into groups quickly. But then doing that when you have to have exactly 2 to 4 people, of which only one can be a drummer and only one can be a vocalist, and 1 to 2 can be guitarists, and any combination of those can have gold or silver or a guest account tied to a specific gold account. Like, it's this crazy mess of combinatorial hell, essentially, of like trying to get all of those people into a group. And like, I mean, to be honest, we didn't hit it the first time. Like, a lot of my pain for 2008, like after shipping Rock Band, was going to like a Rock Band night and seeing everyone get up and then seeing the first guy just wail on the drums and navigate and like go through all the menus back and forth, and I just cry in a ball in a corner somewhere. But it's like, we eventually sorted it out, and like I think it's testament to how great like the gameplay was, and how great all of those systems came together, that people were willing to endure us learning how to get like all of these people into a session to play that experience.
Yeah. And
sorry, what were the other 2 questions?
One was, what was the biggest regret about the direction it went? Was it the oversaturation that we talked about earlier?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest regret was, I think, us not dealing with that saturation. Like, I think on our end, like until I left, it felt to me that we were basically making 3 Rock Band games. And that ignored, like, and stuff like the track packs and like Beatles and things like that. Like, the track packs didn't count as games. Beatles definitely counted as a game, but the track packs were just ways for people to get DLC, and like that we had rationalizations for how those weren't saturating while Activision was doing Metallica and Van Halen and like all of these other things and sucking all of the air out. And it's not until like you leave and like take a look at like all of the things that Rock Band was involved that you would be like, wow, there were 19 Rock Band games or whatever the thing was, when you look at it from a title perspective.
Yeah.
I kind of wish we'd caught that earlier. Like, but beyond that, like it was a pretty crazy ride. Like I don't think we could ever sustain the peaks that went to, and I don't think you'd want to sustain those peaks. Like I think it was an amazing game and an amazing experience to be a part of.
Yeah.
In terms of like the other question was like when we knew we made it. For me, it was E3 2008. We rented out the Orpheum in LA and had the Who play a private concert for us and everyone at E3.
Wow.
It was just this surreal moment of being in that audience. And just like it's just at that, like, it's kind of cliche, but it was like at that moment, it's like, this is the peak. This is nothing can beat having the Who play a private concert for you and like talk about stuff you're working on as like stage banter. Like it's a very surreal experience that I was just It still leaves me speechless to a degree.
That's awesome. So let's go back to kind of stuff that No Goblin's doing. Have you got any future, like, how are your future plans laid out right now? Do you have one game in the works and a couple of more kind of on the back burner, for once that gets into place? How are you looking at your company right now?
So we're working on our first game right now, which is PC and sort of next gen consoles. We're looking to announce that incredibly soon. I'm just finishing up our trailer that we're going to announce soon. That's going to be coming out in 2014. And that's basically a small team of us working on that. It's Panzer and I as a core team, and then we have a bunch of extra people doing some part-time work with us and doing some consulting work to help us through. And that's looking pretty promising. I'm finding things about that game that make me really excited, which is especially tough when you're like looking at it like face first for months at a time and working on business things at the same time and shipping out 400 calendars to people. So like I'm pretty excited to get that out there and see people's reactions to it. Beyond that point, like we have a bunch of ideas of what we want to do next, and a lot of it kind of depends on how well this first game goes. Like if it's a blockbuster success, we'll scale up to a full team and we'll do some of our crazier ideas. If it's not, then we'll work on some other smaller ideas that are still pretty crazy in their own right, but kind of fit our team size.
Now, and this is something that I think a lot of I talk, it's very difficult for me to get people from within the borders of existing big companies, but I managed to get a lot of them that have just sort of stepped out of it and are just getting into the whole indie dev thing. Mm-hmm. Like how, when you came out, were you bankrolled with your success? Like how are you paying yourself as you move forward at this point in time?
So we're like half indie essentially. I have a bunch of my own savings that I've been saving up for a while. We also have some external investors that have a stake in the company and have money coming in to support us. So like we're pretty much set for our end. Like we're not eating ramen every day and stuff like that. So like we're kind of fake indie in that regard. And, at the same time, though, like it's still a small team. We're still a small budget. We're not we're not making crazy $1 million Blur trailers and things like that. But it's a little nicer knowing that we have a certain amount of runway to make a game, and I'm not going to have to start panhandling for money at some point. Did
you ponder doing a Kickstarter or anything?
We did at the start. After the Drake Tracker Kickstarter, I don't think anything will ever top that. So I think a lot of it is the money we would need to do a Kickstarter for the games we want to make. I don't think we would hit the amount that we would need.
Right.
And we're not asking, like, it's not saying that Kickstarter can't raise it. It's just like more saying that if we wanted to make a game with a $200,000 budget, like I don't think me and Panzer and the No Goblin name and our game, even if our game is the best game in the world, I don't think that's enough for us to hit that level.
Right.
And I don't want to play the game that some Kickstarters do where they lie about the value and they say, oh, we only need 20,000, and then they hope that the stretch pays for the rest, because that's it's a crappy thing to be tense on that, and it's a crappy thing to do to like people who want to play your game as well. Like people should be honest up front with how much you need.
Yeah.
So I think for us, like we kind of dismissed it based on it wasn't really a great fit for the kind of stuff we want to do. But at the same time, like Drake Tracker proves like Kickstarter is a pretty great if all those things line up.
So someone in the chat room did have to break the ice and say, "Are you sure Rock Band Green Day wasn't your biggest regret?"
Oh, that hurts right here. Oh man.
And let me ask you this: like, I've heard you talk about how getting AC/DC into Rock Band was like one of your personal kind of goals, and what were some of the other musical choices that you wanted to pull in? And I'm sorry to go back to this, but
no, that's totally fine.
It resonates with people.
No, totally cool.
Like, what other bands were you kind of like secretly rooting and hoping you could get into the game?
So yeah, AC/DC was a huge one. I still can't believe we got like Live at Donington and stuff like that. Oh man, so many bands. My brain is kind of glossed over trying to keep up with the DLC catalog.
Well, and one thing, as a person who was like slightly past the modern music curve when all that was going on. I mean, I had pretty good taste in music, but I wasn't keeping up at that point in time. Like, I was impressed. Like, I really felt like you guys touched on a lot of different stuff and really tried to appeal to a lot of different people with what you presented. And then, like, and I know you didn't have anything necessarily to do with Lego Rock Band, but there's another one that was like, I was like, holy cow, they got all kinds of interesting little things here. And I feel like there was a lot of care that went into that and a lot of love.
I think Lego Rock Band also doesn't get a lot of credit for a lot of the cool things it did. Like, it had, had fully interactive environments and cinematics. It had, you're building like these vehicles to go through. Like, it was definitely a spin-off title, but I don't think it was as terrible as some people like claim it to be.
I still play it a lot. I some of the songs on there are so catchy, I can't help it. Like, it's what I crave when I think about playing at my house.
Yeah, so yeah. Actually, while you were saying all that, I realized that the one band that I really wanted and that I was super glad we got towards the end was Electric Six.
Yes.
We actually, whole way that started actually was they were playing at the Middle East in Cambridge, which is like a block away from the Harmonix offices. And we would go see them all the time. And so one of the times we went, our audio manager basically went side of stage and like basically try and grab them as they went out to try and get them to go onto Rock Band. And that's kind of like how that conversation started was basically harassing them on stage to come into the game.
I love Electric Six. They go on every Spotify playlist I've ever made in my life.
They're close to a perfect band, I think.
Yes. There was another my latest one is Down at McDonald's. That's my big song by them that I just can't get enough of. So somebody else in the chat room says, was there a lot of competition with Guitar Hero to secure the licenses to some of the songs? Because I know there was some crossover.
There wasn't really a lot of competition. Like a lot of it was more dealing with exclusives. So Activision started claiming bands as exclusives, which kind of sucked. A lot of it was more on the audio side and having those guys managing weekly DLC and managing that 6 month trail of things we had to do to get it done, and then finding out 2 days before that this song can't be released because of X exclusivity or Y masters issue. I think a lot of that was luckily out of my control. So I if I had to deal with licensing and all of the the crazy things with exclusivity, I think I probably would be crazy or completely gray by now.
Awesome. Well, we've talked enough about Rock Band. Now I've heard you discuss Gunstringer, and we'll wind down. I think we're a little bit over an hour right now. But I've heard you discuss that one of the exciting things about that was you imagined it as a Kinect project from the very, very beginning.
Yes.
And Gunstringer seemed to have such mixed reviews. Some people either got it and loved it, or they didn't get it and they hated it. What do you think kind of motivated that?
I think a lot of it is Kinect in itself. A lot of the problem, the great thing about Kinect is as a designer, I get basically 40 bones and angles on them, and I can figure out what stuff I want to do off those angles, which is something that I don't get from a Wiimote or the PlayStation Move or stuff like that. The downside, especially for first gen Kinect, I haven't actually tried out the Xbox One Kinect yet. The downside is that if you don't have the perfect sweet spot for getting all of that together, that skeleton just basically collapses upon itself, and your arms start jittering out. Or we had a problem in Gunstringer where you'd use your left hand to move the puppet and your right hand to shoot. And so if you were doing a thing where you were moving to the right and then shooting to the left, your arms would cross, and then the Kinect, if you didn't have everything perfect, it would basically merge the two arms together and then basically vibrate them through your spine as you were trying to play the game. And so a lot of our work, half the work was getting all of that stuff set up, and it was super easy, and then the other half is just catching all of those cases where people wearing long spaggy sleeves caused the thing to freak out. So how do we catch that? Or when I move slightly, it breaks various things.
Did you ever bill Microsoft for finding out these problems with their hardware?
Well, they bought us at the end of it. So
oh, okay, good, yeah.
Yeah, I mean it was fun rethinking how to make a game out of a skeleton instead of two sticks, and that was really fun. I don't think Gunstringer would have been fun on the controller, and we had a test rig with a controller, so we didn't have to stand up all the time because we're incredibly lazy. But that was more for us to just get through it rather than to play it. The pattern swiping and things like that, I think were things that you could only really pull off with Kinect.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think we'll wind down the show. I'm still having trouble getting 100% on my feet. I do not have a guest booked for next week. I've been trying to reach the guys who do Gone Home, Fulbright Studio. They're not replying to my tweets. It's breaking my heart.
Those guys are jerks.
I know. Gah. So,
hell for that.
Such mean people.
God, that Dan Teasdale calling out people. What a jerk.
Why aren't Gone Home on Core Elements Tracker 2000 EX?
Exactly.
So, but do tune in next week. I'm going to try to get a guest. I just don't know who it's going to be yet. Dan, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm sorry Spencer couldn't make it. He's a huge rhythm game fan. I'm sure he would have loved to have talked to you. It's really funny. He's a huge rhythm game fan. He's a huge Double Fine fan, and he missed this show, and he missed the show with Ron Gilbert on it.
No.
Yes. So there's So there's and I'll close out with one final question from the chat room. How does it feel to be such a jerk?
It's fantastic. I am glad that now I am famed indie asshole Dan Teasdale. It's liberating. I can say whatever I want.
Jonathan Blow, watch out.
Yeah.
Okay, y'all have a great week. You've been listening to Core Elements, exploring gaming one element at a time. A podcast by the Dead Workers Party. See the show notes and get more information at coreelements.deadworkers.com or leave us a voicemail at 256-812-1010.
Dead Workers Party Network, jumping one shark at a time.